Well, Nikesh, ladies and gentlemen, thank you. Thank you very much for inviting me back at the Google Zeitgeist conference. I can see the uniform hasn't changed at all. I'm one of only 3 people wearing a tie, as far as I can tell, in the audience. But it is good to be here. I thought, unlike last time, I spoke about the economy, and I'm very happy in the question session to answer lots of questions on economic matters and other things. But I thought I'd use this, my opening speech, to talk about a subject that hopefully is a lot more exciting, and that is you. The impact that you are having as internet entrepreneurs, innovators, technologists on the world of government and politics. Now, recent events in the Middle East and North Africa demonstrate just how powerful the internet can be as a tool in the fight against oppression. In fact, look at almost any big social change of the past 200 years, and you will see that it's been driven by a paradigm shift in communication technology. Newspapers, radio, telephony, television, and now, most dramatically of all, the internet. And for politicians of my generation, that's an incredibly disruptive impact, but it's not a threat, it's an opportunity. An opportunity to build societies that are more open, more innovative, and more prosperous. As we all know, virtually every walk of life is being affected in some way by the internet and by new technology. And that's why over the course of this conference, you're going to be hearing from experts talking about how the internet is changing the economy, affecting our culture, transforming our society. And in my view, the impact that the internet is having on government is equally profound. And that's what I'd like to focus on today. I'd like to look at 3 of the most dramatic ways that the internet age is changing government. The way it's changing accountability, the way it's changing policy making, and the way it is changing public services. Let me take each in turn. First, changing accountability. Now, you don't need me to tell you how the internet has eroded traditional information asymmetries. We're also used to talking about the democratization of information, that perhaps sometimes is easy to forget what a fundamental change it has brought about. For centuries, literally centuries, of access to the world's information and the ability to communicate it was controlled by an elite few, by the powerful, the wealthy, the well-educated. Today, billions of people can access more information than entire governments could access just a generation ago. And of course, the globalization of these information flows, thanks in large part to mobile internet access in sub-Saharan Africa and other parts of the developing world, is increasing every day. This is rapidly eroding traditional power and informational imbalances. And it's irrevocably increasing the accountability of politicians and governments to the people that they are supposed to serve. I thought there was a brilliant example of this during the British Prime Minister's trip to India last year, which I was on. As part of the trip, we thought we would organise a hack day at the Google offices in Bangalore. And we flew over some British coders, stuck them in a room with Indian developers and social entrepreneurs to see what they could build together over the course of a few hours. And they decided to create a new tool that would make the Indian police more accountable. And here's how they did it. In India, giving someone a quick missed call on their telephone, on their mobile phone, is a bit like poking on Facebook. You call someone, you let it ring for a second, then you hang up, and it's a cost-free way of saying hi or I'm thinking about you. And what our team of programmers did was build an app that lets people in India give a missed call to a special number saved in their phone whenever they had an unsatisfactory encounter with the local police. This missed call then got plugged into a heat map that showed the rough location of people's complaints, and so highlighting for the first time the parts of India where people are most unhappy with their local police. This heat map then can be used by civil society or by government to put pressure on underperforming police forces to change their ways. It's a clever initiative and just one of thousands of examples of how new technology is improving accountability around the world. And for a long time, governments, including the British government, were much too slow to accept this. I think it tells you something of the culture of secrecy in Whitehall that Tony Blair says in his autobiography, I kid you not, he says the Freedom of Information Act was his biggest regret in government. Now, maybe there are some other things he should have regretted more, but from day one of the new government, we have tried to take a different path, up to you to judge whether we've succeeded in doing that, and to embrace the accountability revolution enabled by the internet age. It seems incredible that this time last year, the British public couldn't access even some of the most basic information needed to hold the government to account. Spending data broken down on an item-by-item basis, simply not available a year ago, is available now. The contracts signed by central and local government, now available. Government procurement tender documents, online. The salaries of senior government officials. Incidents of crime in your neighbourhood broken down on a street-by-street basis. And thanks to these efforts, government data sets like these, 6,000 of them in total, are now freely available to be analysed, interrogated, mashed up. And that is only the beginning. Over the next 12 months, we're going to unlock some of the more valuable data sets still locked away in government servers. This is the raw data that will enable you, for the first time, to analyse the performance of public services and of competing providers within those public services. So a year from now, websites and services will use this data to help the public find the answers to important questions like, which is the right GP for your family? How well are different departments in my nearest hospital performing? What is the quality of teaching like in my local school, broken down by subject area? Was the person who broke into the car on my street ever apprehended by the police, and what happened next? Our ambition is to become the world leader in open data and accelerate the accountability revolution that the internet age has made possible. Because, let's be clear, the benefits are enormous, not just in terms of identifying waste and driving down costs, although the consequence of spending transparency is already being felt across the public sector. No, if anything, the social and economic benefits of open data are even greater. Let's take medicine, for example. Now, this is well known to people who work at Google, but a few years ago, Sergey Brin, the co-founder of Google, took a DNA test that revealed he had up to a 75% chance of developing Parkinson's over the course of his life. His response? To use the power of open data to search for a cure. He has funded the collection of a huge amount of health data, drawn from over 10,000 people, which is now being analysed to yield new insights into the linkages between drugs, patient behaviour and the disease. And this approach, using large data sets to search for possible correlations and causations, shows the massive potential for open data to transform scientific research. The economic impact of this open data revolution will be similarly profound. The annual global market for financial services data analytics is estimated to be worth over $20 billion. According to a new McKinsey report, the market for health analytics could be even larger, as much as $300 billion in the United States alone each year. And as we all know, with internet-enabled sensors increasingly being embedded in cars, in smart meters, in our electrical appliances, the amount of data being produced is increasing rapidly. This so-called Internet of Things opens up the possibility of new services and tools, from self-drive cars, which Google are seeking to develop, to powerful dynamic energy efficiency applications. And I want the UK to be at the forefront of this new wave of innovation. And that's why our growth policies will focus on open data over the coming months to ensure that we maximise the business opportunities at hand. It's why it's great to be able to announce today that two of our leading universities, Imperial College London and University College London, are developing plans for an unprecedented partnership to create a new research centre that will focus on how we best use the massive amounts of data, energy data, transport data, social data, being generated in the world's biggest cities. This Smart Cities Research Centre will develop new technologies in partnership with leading companies to harness and exploit these new data sets, support the businesses and technologies of the future. And as part of the Tech City initiative, the research centre will be based in Shoreditch and will be a fantastic boost to the East London technology cluster. So the first impact of the internet age on government has been to change accountability. The second has been to change the nature of policy making itself. For just as the old asymmetries of information have been eroded, so too have the perceived asymmetries of wisdom. I genuinely believe that in almost all areas of government, we do a better job when we open up policy making and open ourselves up to the ideas of the crowd. We've done it in tax policy, where wherever possible, we're now publishing detailed tax changes months before the budget, months before they actually get turned into legislation, so that tax experts and others can crawl over the drafting, spot errors, and implementation problems. We're doing it with legislation more generally through our public reading stage, which will give people the opportunity to highlight drafting and technical errors during the parliamentary process. But we've also done it to generate new ideas and policy proposals. In the run-up to last year's spending review, we didn't leave it to Treasury officials alone to look for efficiency savings and ways to save money. We opened up the process in an unprecedented way. We launched a website enabling public sector workers to feed in their ideas about how to best save money and redesign processes. There were over 10,000 proposals submitted in the first 24 hours alone. And then we had a team poring over these suggestions. Many of them made it into our spending review final process. And I met many of the public sector workers who had taken part and felt genuinely empowered by doing so, that people were listening to their ideas. We then opened the process up to the public, and there were hundreds of thousands of people who took part. Now, to say that people are disengaged from the work of government and to say that they just want their politicians to take care of these things, that was disproved, I think, by that exercise. And we're applying this commitment to openness to government procurement too. At the launch of the Tech City in East London last November, one young entrepreneur called Glenn Shoesmith told the Prime Minister about a problem he had encountered. He had invented a low-cost technology that allows people to book slots online at their sports centre or their local swimming pool. Now, when he pitched the idea to the Olympics team, he was told to find the relevant tender document and to fill it in. But the system didn't know about the product, so there was no tender document and no way for Glenn to sell his innovative product to the government. And this problem happens time and again, and we're using open processes to try and fix it. Last month, we launched an open procurement competition, an innovation launchpad, encouraging small companies to pitch to government their innovative new technologies and services. In other words, instead of having to wait for the right public sector tender document to come along, because it often never does, you can send your prototype directly to the government. And leading technology experts such as Mike Lynch, the co-founder of Autonomy, and angel investor Sherry Kutu are helping us judge the entries and work with the companies to help them compete and win deals from the government. We've applied a similar logic to the challenge of reducing regulation. Instead of simply relying on government hierarchies to decide which regulations should be reformed or abolished, we've opened up the process to the wisdom of the crowd. We're calling it the Red Tape Challenge, and here's how it works. We are going to publish, sector by sector, almost every piece of regulation on the books so that businesses and the public can feed in their comments, what works, what doesn't, what should be scrapped, how things could be simplified or done with less regulation. Every single suggestion will be looked at, and if any sensible proposals are rejected, ministers will have to explain publicly why. In other words, we turn the default on its head. Instead of government deciding whether or not to listen to the public, we are forcing government to listen. And we want to remain at the cutting edge of open source policy making. I'm pleased to be able to tell you today that we've just recruited Beth Novak, who used to work at the White House, running President Obama's Open Government Initiative, to help us take this agenda forward. And I can't think of a better person to help us do that. She literally wrote the book, Wiki Government, on how policy making needs to change in the internet change. She's a genuinely world-class recruit. She'll work alongside the likes of Martha Lane Fox, Tim Kelsey, Tom Steinberg, on how to harness new technologies to make government more innovative and accountable. So the second impact of the internet age is on how we make policy. The third impact I'd like to talk to you about today is the way it's changing the way we design and run public services. Now, this is in part thanks to the massive potential, frankly, to save costs. It used to cost the government £10 to process every single driving licence application or self-assessment tax form. Online, the cost is less than £2 per application. Now, efficiencies like that are too powerful to be ignored. So if we make the most of this opportunity, we can, I believe, significantly reduce the cost of administering government. Martha Lane Fox, who I just mentioned, the government's digital champion, argues that shifting just 30% of public service contracts to digital channels has the potential to deliver annual savings of more than £1 billion. And if we think about how internet banking has gone from a standing start to the mainstream in just over a decade, there's no reason why public services can't do the same. Now, it won't happen by its own volition. That's why we've made the bold commitment that all our public service reforms will be digital by default. In other words, in all our reforms, we assume that public service delivery can be shifted online, and officials and ministers have to justify why any aspect needs to be delivered through traditional offline channels. This is a huge culture shift for government, and it's beginning to have an impact across the public sector. For example, with our welfare reforms, we're designing the new universal credit system with online delivery in mind right from the start, not as an expensive afterthought. My own department, the Treasury and Inland Revenue, has already moved to online-only corporation tax returns, significantly reducing administrative costs for you, the taxpayer. In the budget, I announced that over the next couple of years, we'll be doing the same for all the main business taxes. And we're creating a single government website. You can find the prototype today if you go on alpha.gov.uk. And that will enable us to redesign government services from the bottom up and put the user in charge. Now, because we all know new technology doesn't just enable us to reduce costs, it can also help us drive up standards. For over a century, the dominant assumption in policy making was that in every walk of life, we needed people at the centre micromanaging public services. Why? Because the public was considered to lack the information and the tools to take more control themselves. And the internet age has shattered that cosy consensus. It's opening up new possibilities to open up public services, empower citizens, and unleash massive innovation. Let me give you 3 brief examples. Personal budgets will be able to be managed by individuals online, choosing the tailored public services that they need. These are the personal budgets that people with disabilities, for example, get. Patients will be able to access and share their personal health records and take greater control of their own treatment. And communities will be able to use online platforms to engage with the local planning system, come together to decide on issues like zoning and the use of space in their neighbourhood. Now, of course, this age of digitised public services creates challenges as well as opportunities. There's the challenge of ensuring the security of personal data and financial information, for example. The hacking into Sony's online PlayStation network, the theft of millions of users' credit card details, is a high-profile example of the need for robust online security. This applies equally to government as to the private sector. In any given month, there are over 20,000 malicious emails sent to government networks. And here is a salient story from the year that I've been Chancellor. We have seen, during the last year, hostile intelligence agencies make hundreds of serious and pre-planned attempts to break into the Treasury's computer system. In fact, it averaged out at more than 1 attempt per day. This makes the Treasury one of the most targeted departments across Whitehall. At one point last year, a perfectly legitimate G20-related email was sent to the Treasury and some other international partners. Within minutes, it appeared that the email had been resent to the same distribution list. In fact, the second email, the legitimate attachment had been swapped for a file containing malicious code. To the recipient, it would have simply looked like the attachment had been sent twice. Now, fortunately, our systems identified the attack and we stopped it. But we're not taking this challenge lying down. And at the spending review last year, when we had to take lots of difficult decisions with the government budget, we announced we would invest £650 million in our new national cyber security programme to enhance our online security. We're determined to get the security question right so that we can maximise the opportunities that the internet age offers. Another challenge is that we have to ensure inclusive access as public services are increasingly migrated onto the internet. After all, there are still 9 million adults in the UK who have never been online. We can and we will address this challenge. We're going to try and get as close as possible to 100% connected Britain. Over the past few months, we've been working with some of the world's leading technology companies to ensure that the next generation is equipped with the digital skills they need to flourish in the digital age. And thanks to this engagement, Hutchinson Whampoa, for example, has agreed to pilot their successful digital maths program developed by the Stanford Research Institute, which are going to provide digital tools to support maths teaching in UK schools. BlackBerry has agreed to launch an apps challenge for UK schools, teaching kids how to design new online applications. Intel are going to run a range of schemes to support young people set up their own online businesses. And the Polster YouGov is sponsoring a startup summer program to provide mentoring, research, funding, cash prizes to encourage university students to set up internet companies. Taken together, these schemes will benefit thousands of young people in the years ahead. And they show how the government is working with leading businesses to turn the challenge of change to our advantage. The same is true across all areas of government. As we've seen, the internet is forcing us to rethink government from the bottom up. It's changing accountability, it's changing policy making, it's changing public services. These changes are opening up incredible new opportunities for progress. The opportunity to embrace new technology, to improve public services, to tackle old social problems, to make our societies more open, more fair, more prosperous, to spread freedom and open markets to new corners of the world. Together we can make the most of these new possibilities and use the power of new technology to redesign government and build a brighter tomorrow. Thank you very much.